the next topic may ruffle some feathers, but the question is sexual liberation really liberating?
Oh, let's ruffle some feathers.
Is sexual liberation really liberating?
No, I actually think this is a very multifaceted, layered conversation that a lot of times I think doesn't get that treatment when it's discussed. The reason why I say that is because first we have to define sexual liberation, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that in a lot of the conversations I hear is seen as, oh, you just want to go sleep with everybody. Like, oh, so now you're liberated, right? I don't look at it like that. And I don't think that that's what it is. I didn't take time to go look up the actual definition. I was going to, but I don't want to. I'm just going to tell you what I think, what it is in my opinion, and why I think that it is liberating if it's actual sexual liberation. What I was going to say is that I know for a fact that us as girls in this society, especially as Black girls, I don't know what be happening in other households and communities, but I know what happened in households and communities y'all grew up in, right? That we are shamed a lot. We're shamed for our bodies. We're shamed for any type of sexuality, any type of anything that is exhibited. We're shamed from a young age. Like as soon as our bodies start to develop, oh, go do this, oh, go do that. We talked about it in a certain way, like, oh, she fast or she grown and all of these other things. So I think we are taught from a very young age to be ashamed of our bodies, to be ashamed of being sexual or having sexual feelings. Right. We're told that we, one thing that I feel like was kind of instilled in me early that took me a long time to really work through is that, like boys are the ones who want sex. Right. Never one time. Give me 1 second. Never one time was I ever told, like, you're going to want to have sex or you're going to have these. It was all about don't let the boys do this, right? Boys are after this. And I feel like that comes as a shock to you growing up and hitting puberty and stuff like that. And you start to feel like it's something wrong with you because you like, well, I thought the boys the ones supposed to want it. What's going on around here? And I think that that's what starts all of those problems. So when I look at sexual liberation, I just look at it as being in touch with your desires, right? What you want, having autonomy in your choices and your decisions, and not having shame about your choices and decisions. Like one thing that stuck out to me for so many years is I remember it was in the news for a minute, and it was this school that had a sex education program, and it may have been multiple schools, I don't know, but it had this sex education program. And what they did was in order to teach the girls about celibacy or something like that, they passed around a stick of gum. They passed around the stick of chewing gum around the classroom. And once it got like to the last person, they got like this little, nasty piece of gum with all the lint stuck to it and all of this. And basically they told the girls like, yeah, this is you. After you, the more you do XYZ, you're degraded now. This is like this is what we tell girls. You know what I mean? So that's what I think about. That's what I mean in regards to sexual liberation, like being free from that concept that we're somehow less than because of a sexual experience or sexual desire, anything like that. We are the ones who are diminished. Like our whole humanity is diminished because of sex. Men are not. Men could be they're gonna be the same. They're the same person. They viewed as the same. Some of them even get more credit and more esteem, in the community for having sex or their sexual experience or prowess. But we are like our whole being is diminished and disrespected. So that's what I think when I think of sexual liberation. Just letting all that stuff go out the window and really getting more in touch with what you want, who you are, and being grounded in that.
So does sexual liberation, is a woman sexually liberated by her own doing, or is it something that society allows?
No, I think that she has to be sexually liberated by her own doing. See, because if you're just gonna equate having a lot of sexual partners to sexual liberation, then I just don't think that that's what it is, right? Because if you're in your mind, you're like, oh, I could just have all this sex and that's gonna make, that could be damaging too, depending on what your what your goal is, what you're trying to achieve. If you out here looking for love, looking for whatever, then that's a problem. So it's really comes from yourself. That's what I mean. Like, you have to be really grounded in who you are, and you really have to be aware of the choices that you're making and why you're making those choices. Like I say, if you just out here with no rhyme or reason and you out here looking for comfort or looking for this or looking for that, that's not sexual liberation. Right? Sexual liberation is more along the lines of, I know who I am. I'm grounded in it. This is what I like. This is what I don't like. This is why I'm doing this. This is why I'm not doing that.
So where does the diminishing come from? And I see what you're talking about. Like, in our society, women have certain associations to them when they decide to have sex versus when a man does. So if liberation comes from within, then why does it matter what other people think?
It's not necessarily about other people think, but it's what other people think affects the way that we see ourselves. Like, that's the problem. And if you're not aware of that, and if you never challenge that, then it never changes. Like, even if we look at, this may seem like it has nothing to do with it, but even if we look at things like horror movie tropes, right? Who's the first person to die in a horror movie? The female who had sex, or who was the slutty one, or whatever. You know, I'm saying it's ingrained in so many things. And if you aren't aware of how that outward thing affects you internally, then you're never going to change it. You're not going to get that from on the inside, because you don't even know that it's affecting you, because you're not aware of it. So I think that you have to be aware of how those things affect you. And that's how you protect yourself, and how you kind of choose on your own.
Okay. So liberation in your eyes comes more so from within. Mm-hmm. And you notice that people see you a certain way, but you feel like you need to be liberated from their opinions and what they think about you. That's what you're saying.
I suppose, to a certain extent. Yeah, I mean, yeah, I guess so.
No right or wrong. I'm just getting your opinion. Make sure I understand. All right. What do you ladies think? What do you think, Mrs. Josiah? What do you think?
I was taking some notes. For me, sexual liberation, you got to go back, because and I like how Cannon kind of took us back to what some of us were taught as young women, because I was taught some of that same stuff. Trauma is passed down. And what I like to really explain to people is that when a person has a traumatic experience, depending upon that type of experience, especially a sexual experience, where there has been assault or rape or molestation or abuse, there's a lot of guilt and shame associated with something like that. So trauma is passed down. I know several women that I've come in contact with, whether it be friends or family, they have been touched inappropriately, or they've been groped, or they've had early sexual experiences. Um, and they normalize that trauma by saying stuff like, you know, why are you the only girl over there? Why are you hanging out with all those boys? Or why is your shirt like that? Or why are those shorts like that? And why are those pants like that? Or you can't wear those because you're too shapely. And I remember hearing some of these things like as a little girl, and not really understanding what that actually means, other than, okay, my grandma said that, so I got to do what she tells me to do. So for me, sexual liberation means the freedom to know and understand sex, period. Unfortunately, in our community, a lot of us who think we know sex and know about sex, we don't know. We don't know. We don't know what sex is. We know that basic education, possibly, if somebody broke it down to us. But terms like orgasm, terms like lust and what that really means, or attraction, or intimacy versus sex, or foreplay. These are words that, because some of our family members, friends, people who raised us had traumatic experiences, we can't freely discuss these things growing up. Now, I know it was like that for my household. I'm not saying it's like that for everybody, but I know what it was like for me. And everything that I thought or that I knew about sex at a certain age, I went to my friends and asked them, hey, what does this mean? And what does that mean? So for me, sexual liberation is freedom to know what sex is. I think that's what people are looking for. Freedom to know that pleasure of what it is.
Okay.
I sometimes I think they're not prepared with everything else that comes with it. Like, okay, I'm attracted to that person. Do I necessarily have to sleep with them? Or can I sleep with this person, and that person all at the same time? They're questioning themselves. So I think that the liberation part is actually the freedom to ask questions, the freedom to know, what it actually means to be liberated sexually. You
Okay.
know, um, I agree with Cannon totally that it's not about this freedom to just kind of what I call run amok. I don't think it's that. I think it's just freedom to ask the questions to actually have the discussion. Because I think people know things and they don't think they know um, what they're really getting into. The other thing that I wrote down was that men and women are different. You know, um, it's like they're taught sexual liberation from the time their member is it looks like they're attracted to something, and then it's like okay, it's normal, buddy. And for us, it's girl, you can't say that, or girl, you can't think that, you know. So I think it just stems back to some of this the product of trauma that's just been passed down to us. That okay, this happened to me with this man, so this is how you have to deal with men around you when you haven't had that experience, but because mama, grandma, great grandma, auntie, sister, whoever had it, then we all got to conduct ourselves like that. So that's how I see it. My definition would be just the freedom to know and to understand sex.
Okay.
You know. Hmm.
Okay.
Well, I
And
looked up the definition while we were all just sitting here. And we're all pretty much on point. It's just the changing of the old sexual norms and the, relationships we used to have. And I think it's important that you brought up, Miss Joe, trauma, because what we were taught, or what I was taught in the Southern area by my older generation of women, my grandmothers, great grandmothers, was that women, good girls didn't do certain things, regardless if you were married or not. You don't do those things. That's for bad girls. Those are for ladies of the night. That's for when you want to go get a dirty woman. Do that with her. But, women like dirty stuff too, like you said, Cannon. What if I'm not a good girl? Then what? Then you're denying yourself, like you said, Miss Joe, based off somebody else's possible trauma, because they could have been traumatized and just trying to say, well, he did that to me because I was bad, so you're not going to do that ever in your life. When that's not the case, So I think it's important for couples to explore themselves. And I also think that's why a lot of women haven't reached their happy place, because it's too many women over 40 that ain't reached their happy place. So, I think couples should take that time. It's gonna be fumbling. It's not gonna be an A+ every time. You're gonna get a D tonight. Next week it might be an A+. Tomorrow might be an F. That's part of the learning process. That's why grace is so important. That's why, as the person mentioned before, courage is important, because it's some wives that may not be as vanilla as their husband, or their husbands might be, looking for a little more spice from their wife. So that's the part of communicating. That's the courage you need.
I want to add something to that too, real quick. And this goes back to Raven, what you were saying about the spice and women deserve. We like spice. We want spice. We deserve something. Now the virtue part of it, because I do have Christian values and virtue when it does come to sex. But I do question sometimes, what is it virtue, Javonda? And I think most of it was, or was it what was filled in my head as a teenager or as a preteen? Don't bring no babies around here. Don't don't be chasing after these little boys. They ain't got nothing for you. And the list goes on. I was petrified of sex for a long time, like terrified, like just as a teenager, like walking around in high school, looking at everybody else like, y'all gonna get in trouble because we all know what you're doing. And I'm too scary to do that because I don't want kids. I'm telling you, that goes back to that trauma. But I had to learn on my own, and I had to learn from other women that if I see something that I like in a man, physical attraction or something, it's okay to validate that feeling. It's okay to say he's good looking, he's fine, or he's this or that. It's okay to say that. I am a human. I'm going to say things like that.
Yeah.
I think the virtue for me came in with how many people am I willing to share this experience with in my life?
Right.
And that
Right.
was just for me,
Right.
But I think that ignoring carnal desire, like not acknowledging it, I think we need to teach something different, because what we're teaching the kids is you can't talk to me. You can't talk to
Mm-hmm.
me about that. And then if they're
Mm-hmm.
not talking to us, y'all know they're talking to other people. I did it. They're
Mm-hmm.
talking to other people, and then they're confused. And then you got those two types of people. Well, when I'm confused, I want to find out for myself.
And that's
I'm gonna
how
just
they
go
get
jump
taken
into
advantage
something.
of.
That's
There you
true.
go.
That's
There you
exactly how they
go.
get taken advantage of. But I like one of the
Yes.
comments Gail said that
Mm-hmm.
society has placed the majority of the burden and responsibility on women. She said that's back to Adam and Eve.
Mm-hmm.
Eve was blamed for everything. And I mean
Yeah.
that's facts though, right? Like the responsibility
Yeah.
put on us, but I think that it does have it also has the ability to backfire to a certain extent, right? Because if you're teaching girls
Mm-hmm.
that sexual experiences or sexual or anything that they've done sexually or anything sexual that happened diminishes them in some way, right? Or makes them less,
Right.
then just like you brought up when you said about trauma and different things like that happen to girls when they're younger, that's what can turn a girl to not value herself, because if something happened to her or something like that, then now she's diminished in her mind because you instilling in
Mm-hmm.
them that this sexual activity, now you less than, you
Mm-hmm.
ain't
Like
Mm-hmm.
you're
great,
not pure anymore.
your value is degraded, right? So
Yeah.
now if something happens to me, now what value do I have? Now you telling me that all my value is in this. So now that this happened, I have no value. So what difference does it make now at this point? I might as well just
Mm-hmm.
whatever. So I
Mm-hmm.
think that's
Mm-hmm.
the problem that we run into when we are doing that.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that it does have a lot to do with how we socialize. I think that there are some minor differences in men and women when it comes to that, but I think the majority of those differences are ingrained in us from childhood. Just
Yes.
like you
Yeah.
said, because I always watched
Mm-hmm.
it. Like I say, the boys was allowed to just be as free. The boys I basically told, you gonna want to do it. A man gonna be a man. You gonna like they
Right.
hey, they just being a boy. Look at boys will be boys,
Right.
right? And
Right.
so they're allowed to explore things in a way that we're not. And to me, it also don't add up. It don't match. If you got the girls, you over here telling them they gotta guard it with their life, and you telling the boys they gotta go and sneak and manipulate and do whatever they can to try to get it out of you.
Mm-hmm.
What are
Right.
we doing?
Right.
It's
Great for
crazy.
like
Exactly.
unhealthy relationships. I can definitely
Very
agree.
much, very, very much
Because
so.
men are like on the prowl and women feel like they're being cheated or played, and and so now there's like a lot of distrust on women's part, but also on men's too, because they're like, wait a minute, you trying to act like this isn't what you want, but it really is
Yeah.
what you want. So it just makes for
Right.
very unhealthy relationships. But I wanted to say, so right now, like we're all agreeing though that sexual liberation is not just hooking up with a bunch of people,
Mm-hmm.
not hooking up with just anybody. I think Ken is saying it's the freedom to just be able to talk about it and be able to be honest about the fact that as women we have desires too.
Free from sexual hangups, pretty much.
Yes. And then I know Javonda, you're saying it's the freedom of kind of the same thing, right? Being able
Yeah,
to,
just knowing.
just
Yeah,
knowing
just
like
knowing.
this is my body,
Yeah. Yeah,
sex-
knowing my body, what I like, what I don't like, and being able to talk about it. Because I think the other part of this too is that women are so censored on certain things. Like it's, oh, you're a woman. You can't say that. You can't, especially here in the South. Let me just say that. We're so censored. And it's not that talking about it is, because like I said, I am a Christian. I'm teaching daughter about virtue, but I want her to not judge like it's more to us than just what we have to offer in the bedroom. That's just a small part of who we are as a person. Sex is not this thing. We got jobs, we got careers, we
Men
got
get
education.
to exist outside of that, and that be a small part of who
Exactly.
they are.
So I think that it's important that we get to, it's not this big thing that if we talk about it, the world gonna blow up. And that's what I've had to say to girls that I've mentored before. I have these conversations with, a couple of my nieces that it's normal for you to have sexual desires. It's normal for you to talk about this. It's not normal to think that you're not supposed to talk about this, and we're human. If I cut a man and I cut a woman, we both gonna bleed. Okay? If I cut my hand, I cut his hand, we both gonna bleed. So what does that tell you? We all have kind of these physical desires, and women are just so sensitive on what they can talk about. We can talk about it. It's okay. Nothing bad is going to come of the conversation. And I think that's the message that we pass along to little girls, that we can talk about it. We pass along to our teenage girls. Now, how they choose to deal and operate in their sexual liberation, that's based on their personal choices and decisions. All we can do is say these are the consequences. These are the consequences. You
Yeah.
know,
And I
and
wanted to
consequences,
address,
as you know, they're both positive, negative,
yeah,
and in some situations good or bad. So
yeah. And I wanted to
hmm
address that, like because we've been talking about what is liberation, but I do want to address like, is sexual liberation really liberating? And obviously, we had to answer that question with the way you guys
hmm
are explaining it. It sounds liberating. But there are other ways that we see, especially in our society today, that I don't think are as liberating. So I want to talk about that. But I want to hear from Raven first. What do you think, Raven?
I think, yeah, I don't think sexual liberation has anything to do with promiscuity. I think it's kind of painted like, you got a hot girl summer it up, but I want to drive in the point that you can explore your partner and you guys can reach your happy places without doing everybody. You guys can just do that together, buy all the toys you want to buy, all the stuff you want to do, explore each other, but you don't have to explore everybody in the community.
Yeah. So, and I love that. I can relate a little bit. I grew up in a very Christian home, very traditional. And my mom didn't, and I thank God for what she instilled in me. Um, but she did have a very, I hate to say negative, but like a shame was attached to sex. So for a long time, until recently, I definitely saw my worth tied to my virginity. And now I still think that our value as women does have to do with what we choose to do with our bodies. Like that's me, that's just me. I think that just how we are careful with what we put on our hair and what, you know, who we loan out our purse to, or who we let borrow our shoes, or who we let get in our car. I think we need to be particular about who we let in our bodies.
But see, I think that that's universal, though. I think that's for men and women. I mean, it's too much stuff
I
going on out here.
I agree. But what I'm saying is absolutely, I completely agree with that. But what I'm saying is that I think that there is we have to teach women to value, or our young girls to value ourselves. But sex is not shameful. And that's what I'm trying to say. And so for a long time, because, it seems like we either grow up in like on one extreme or the other. Like we're either like we're not getting hardly any instruction on sex, or we're getting so much, but it's like in like a real kind of confining, kind of detrimental way, which can be problematic in your relationships as you get older, especially dealing with men who have a lot of experience, right? Like it could be problematic if you attach sex to being like to shame. And so my mom never really told me to wait until I was married, but everything that she said to me about sex and the way that she kind of spoke about it when it came up was communicated to me that you shouldn't be having sex, unless he's your husband, and it's shameful if you do. So, I had to kind of bear with that within myself. So I think that liberation does come with understanding that women, girls are going to have feelings, and we should be able to talk about them. And it's okay for us to make a choice with our bodies of what we have to do or what we should do, but here are the consequences. That's liberation to me. So I like you guys bringing that up. I don't want to share too much about my story, but I know what it can be like as you get older and you're trying to have relationships or a relationship with a man, and you have that way of thinking about sex. Like, it can be problematic.
Right.
So I wanted to bring back, though, to the point of, like, is it really liberating? I think in the way that we describe it, it's very liberating. Unfortunately, though, I feel like in our society, a lot of they haven't been taught some of the things that you guys are saying. Like, all they've been taught is don't have sex. That's it. That's all they've been taught. They haven't been taught, oh, this is natural, this is normal. They haven't been taught, but this is your body, you decide. They haven't been taught, you still have to be careful. They haven't been taught about the fact that men and women see sex. You might lay down with somebody and you think you about to marry him, and he like, oh, I hope she don't call me tomorrow. Like, men and women see sex differently. And I think a lot of women really get hurt and not understanding that they get into relationships or they start dating somebody and they think, oh, now I'm going to sleep with him, he'll love me more, I'm his girl now. And I think that is liberating.
Well,
I think it's not liberating, because what happens is you have a whole generation of women who are hurting physically. So they're hurting spiritually because now they've been, they just ready to be free. They haven't really been taught those consequences, the spiritual consequences, the natural consequences of deciding, okay, I do want to have sex with this person, or in that person, in that person, in that person. It builds a lot of baggage. It builds a lot of emotional baggage. And so that is not liberating to me.
Yeah, I think a lot of that still goes hand in hand with, and I'm sorry I'm making all these faces. My husband is acting a total fool in the comment section. But he wasn't making faces at you, Darwin Hill. I'm just looking like,
oh. Your husband is Darwin.
Yeah. He putting our business in the street. Whatever. Stop. But anyway, no, what I was gonna say is I think that all of that still goes hand in hand when you say, like, men and women look at sex differently, right? I still think a lot of that boils down to the way we are socialized, and therein lies the problem, right? Because one of the reasons why I feel like girls are more likely or so gung-ho to feel like they have some type of connection or something with a man that they're sleeping with or willing to do sexual things with is because they're told otherwise they are, bad names, right? If they don't even trick themselves into be like, well, he cares about me. Well, this is okay because he loves me. So it's okay, right? Like, they're curious themselves. They have desires themselves. They want to test out things themselves, but they can't just be like, okay, this guy don't care about me at all. I just want to try this out, because otherwise then they're what? They're the bad names, right?
Mm-hmm.
Do girls have that experience when they're young? Is that what they want, though?
Yes, girls hit puberty just like boys hit puberty. But that's why I say therein lies the problem. And then also therein lies the problem of why I think there is a disconnect when it comes to sex and things like that. Even when you have conversations around consent, right, and different things like that, I feel like all of that causes the problem. Because I distinctly remember, right, being younger, they playing what? Catch a girl, kiss a girl. They you gotta play hard to get, right? Because if you too easy, If you too easy, then you're going to be the problem, right? So you got to, no, I don't really, but you like kind of peeking, like you're going to keep trying. And so what I'm saying is that I feel like a lot of these conversations we don't have, but that's what actually puts, I feel like, kids in those types of situations when it comes to consent and different things like that, because you're teaching girls, if you are too forward, if you are too open, if you are too whatever, you are a little slut bag, right? So now you have to play chase. You have to pretend like you don't want you have to make this boy your boyfriend. He have to love you in order to do, you know what I'm saying? We telling them all of these things, and that's why you run into those problems.
Okay. So
I feel
like think that naturally a man and a woman, when they lay down together, have some type of emotional connection. You don't think that's natural? You think that that's more like a social construction?
I know for a fact that it's not natural. For a fact, a personal fact, that just because you sleep with somebody, you do not have to have any feelings for them before or afterwards. You can never
right. Right.
As a woman, you can never talk to them again. And never think about them again. You can forget that they exist.
Okay. So why then are so many women like so emotionally attached?
I literally just told you, because what I feel like is that a lot of times, most of us in a lot of instances tell ourselves, like we even when you look at relationships, right? And it's like the dudes the boys already know they pretty much got to lie to the girl and be like, yeah, you're my girlfriend, I love you. And the girls, what we have to accept those things to tell ourselves that we're a good girl. You see what I'm saying? I'm a good girl because he loves me, because he's my boyfriend. So I can do these sexual things and still be a good girl, because at least this is with somebody who loves me and who's my boyfriend and all of these other things. And and we have to tell ourselves that so that we don't feel the shame as much, right? So that we can feel like, well, at least he loved me, you know? And so I think that that's what happens.
Okay, so you think it's socially kind of constructed, and okay, that's an interesting perspective. I have never heard that. It's an interesting perspective that that is something that girls kind of adopt because of what they've been hearing.
Yeah, like my husband just said in the comments, Disney did it. I agree. Like, you get those fairy tales, you get all of it. It's what girls are constantly told. I just literally don't think we just naturally grow up and be like, oh, I'm just so emotional and you be attached to this. Like, I don't see it. I think a lot of it comes from how we're socialized and the things that are ingrained in us and what we're told. Prince Charming,
I think it's socialized within a marriage as well, to piggyback off of that, because a lot of people watch a lot of romantic comedies and you assume that you're going to knock the stuff off the counter and get it in. No.
No, you're not.
You're going to leave all your stuff as it is, where it is.
Exactly.
And then that turns into men saying their women are not initiating enough, because if women are told you're not supposed to be doing it, why would I initiate something I'm not supposed to be doing? What? No, I'm a good girl.
Because he's supposed to be the aggressor. Yeah.
You're supposed to be ravishing me, okay? I'm not supposed to be that kind of girl. You're supposed to come get me. So then men are thinking they're not wanted. They're thinking they're not sexually attractive. And the whole time she's like, well, you're not doing what they did on Lifetime. It's the whole sexual liberation thing. It's more than just hot girl summer, and not to just keep harping on that, because that's what a lot of people bring it up, but it's more than that. It's about, those are needs. Y'all got to meet each other's needs. And one way
it's definitely more than that. And let me just say this, because I'm agreeing with a lot of what Cannon and misunderstanding what you're saying. Let me just say this too. We got to start telling the kids all of the consequences that come along with sex. Period. There are some guys out there. Who they don't want the woman who has been passed around. Everybody has an idea of what they like and what they don't like. And now this is where I hold some sisters accountable. Don't get mad if you run into the guy who says, I can't even do it, sis, because you've been here, there, and everywhere. Don't get mad if that's what he likes. He prefers a woman who hasn't been there and everywhere. We can't get mad because he's telling you, And I see your husband in the comments. Yeah, Mr. Dark, they don't want that. I grew up in Middle Georgia. The men I grew up with, country boys. They want that woman to, rip off his clothes. They want to see that side of you when y'all at his house, your house, behind closed doors, and when you're married and your wife. They want to see that part of you in the bedroom. When they start hearing about that part of you all in the street from like the person he working next to, or the guy he went to high school with, or the guy he just met here and there, for some men, it's a turnoff.
Mm-hmm.
Society is being hard on men by telling them, well, that shouldn't matter. You should still want a wife or anyway. You can't tell people what they should and should not like.
I don't think society tells men that. I think those same men are the ones who are actually here, there, and everywhere, and they don't consider what they're doing. But then they got all this criteria. When you didn't heard about him with Susie, everybody all around the corner, but you ain't supposed to care about that. That's not supposed to matter to you as a woman. As a matter of fact, it's supposed to have the opposite effect. He's supposed to be more attractive now. Like, ooh, he's been with all of these people. Oh, so I don't think men are told that. I think men are well within their rights to be like, oh no, you should have a girl that has a clean, squeaky record. I mean, you could have whatever kind of track record out here. You can do whatever you want. But she needs to be chaste in public.
Because some of the same decisiveness that you talked about earlier with the women, right? So where I'm from, the boys are told at an early age, oh, go out there, chase and sow your royal oats or whatever you want to call it. Get out there and get it. And then when they get to a certain age, here come mama and grandma and auntie them. Let me introduce you to this child right here. She's nice and wholesome. She ain't really been with nobody. It's time for you to get married and have some kids. It's confusing because you just told the boy a year or two ago to run him up. You just told him to run him up. Now you're telling him he need to settle down and think about legacy and think about family. Don't go with the girl you run him up with, even though we told you to run him up earlier. Go with this girl over here. It's confusing,
and it doesn't match. It doesn't match because I think I saw a meme before. What my husband said, he said it's mostly insecurity from a man because they don't want to hear about one, and you can have 50. They don't hear that one name. And
I think I'm a little bit old school with this, and maybe that's still a little bit of my mama in me. I agree that there's a double standard, and I don't applaud promiscuity in men or women. I think men should also be particular about who they lay down with. However, I do value a woman saying, you know what, my body is not for everybody, because it's just not. The things that we value, we don't let everybody have. We don't let everybody see. We don't.
But I look at me in the same way. I'm like, dude, I don't want no. I don't mean.
And I agree. And I agree. I don't either. And I hate that our society is like that. I hate that our society makes it okay for men and not okay for women. Here's my thing. Like I was abstinent until 33 years old. Okay, I didn't want a man that had been around the block. I didn't want that. That was so unattractive to me. I remember a guy I was out on a date with, cool guy and everything. He seemed to really be into me. He told me that he had sex with 300 women. Okay. Now that is an extreme, right?
I'm sorry for my face.
I was done right there, and it's like there are men who really take pride in that, right? They take pride in having a whole lot of different women, but then they want the girl who doesn't have a lot of experience. But from my eyes, as the girl who don't have a lot of experience, I'm like, I don't want that. That's not hot. And I question your judgment, so I'm with you that there's a double standard, but let's be clear. I don't push for women to be like, girl, yeah, go get him, go get him, go get him. I appreciate your perspective, Cannon, that you were talking about the, like, in terms of there being a social construction that makes women think that there's an emotional attachment. That's something that I will think about on my own, think more and delve more into. But at the end of the day, our bodies are a temple. So I do think that we have to remember to push the idea that, yeah, it's your body, you should love it, you should explore it, you should talk about it, you know, and you should have sex and you should enjoy sex. But I do think we have to be careful with telling like young girls and women, like, you know what, this is still your body. It's where you live.
And
So,
boys.
And boys as well, of course. And boys.
Like I say, you know, all those consequences run both ways. They run both ways.
Well, I mean, let me just say this. They should run both ways. They absolutely should. But they don't always run both ways. And that's just the reality of our world. Like, you know, and I'm like Ashley, my big mama Ward is for to come in now, because in a perfect world, you know, all the consequences would be so, you know, they would be right here on the same level. And we're teaching and they're making guided decisions about sex. But in the world that we live in, some of these consequences are not the same for men and for women. And that's kind of, you know, unfortunately, I'm teaching the young people in my life and those that I mentor too, that the world has some harsh realities to it. But just because the world has some harsh realities doesn't mean you have to step into the world not having some type of principle that's going to protect what you value. You know, and that goes back to what we said earlier about sexual liberation, the freedom to actually know what sex is. So now that I know what it is, what I'm going to do with it? Do I know what I need to do with it? Do I know who I want to do it with? And when I do make these choices to have sex with certain people, what am I basing these choices off of? Is it just that carnal, fleshly desire that, okay, I see something that I want and I'm going to go get it? Or am I actually sitting down making conscious decisions about, you know, having sex? I think that there's pressure on women having conscious decisions about having sex with certain people. And I think that there's not enough emphasis on having, you know, thinking about who you're having sex with when you're a guy, you know, or when you're a boy. Like I said, in a perfect world, we'd be sitting down with the girl and the boy and saying, hey, there's consequences to this, kids. But the reality of it is that dad is taking the son over here in this corner, or whomever is taking the boy over here in this corner and saying one thing, and the girl is being told another. I think it really comes down to teaching girls and boys, young men and young women, you know, is sex something that you actually want to value? Is this a value to you? Because when you value something, you develop principles to protect that value. You develop some things to keep that as a value, you know. And when it turns into something else, now we're running into words like addiction. Now we're running into words like habits, you know. And you know that's probably another show and another conversation. But you know, some of us out here saying we value sex and that we, you know, it's so important to us, but really it's something that you're doing that is like a habit, something that you're doing to cope. And you kind of doing it a lot with a lot of
people. It's a crutch.
But that's
right.
But that's what I was gonna say too when we talk about the differences between the conversations that we're having with boys and girls. And I just want to say, hey, Ka, shout out. You know, she's in the comments.
Hey,
but I think we do boys a disservice, right? Because we don't properly prepare them for the consequences that come along with the sex that they're having. Like one of the things, who was it? T.I. before, and a lot of people say this. It wasn't just him, right? But he justified, you know, wanting to monitor his daughter's virginity versus what he do with his sons, because his mind, he like, well, the child is gonna go to her mama house, right? The child ain't gonna be at my house. But in the same token, on the flip side, you aren't concerned at all about what that will do to your son who actually wants to be a father, right? If he fathers a child with the wrong woman, then he's gonna be at an even greater disadvantage because the baby at her house. So now he at your house depressed, sick, can't eat, upset, want to go beat people up and fight and do all this stuff because he can't see his baby. Like that's a consequence. Like that is also a consequence that does not get discussed. Like, well, it's gonna be over there. Yeah, but he wants it over here. Like he wants to see his baby, right? And that's why I say we don't talk to boys about that. That's why. Like it's the whole victim mentality surrounding that type of stuff, right? Where they be like, "Cause they won't let me see my baby. I can't." And it's like they didn't even know the girl from a can of paint.
Yes, yes. You didn't think about who you were laying down with because you're a man.
And you will have conversations with them and they acting like you speaking French when you be like, but they're like, what do you mean? What do you mean? I mean, she just shouldn't be like this. Like, yeah, but you have a choice. What do you mean? When did I have a choice? I didn't.
Yeah. And you find your way. You have now attached yourself to somebody for 18 years at minimum. And not only that, you have brought somebody into the world that is yours, right? And who's going to be influenced by someone. And you don't think you should care who that someone is? That's problematic. So I agree. Right. I completely agree. We do not teach men and young boys that they should be accountable and responsible for who they lay down with. And people always talk about like the baby aspect of it, but I'm always thinking about the STD aspect of it.
Exactly.
The gift that keeps on giving.
The baby, but guess what? You can carry an STD. So
exactly.
It's beyond me.
You know how many I call them so working in social work and working as a mental health clinician for the state and private, you know, I have condoms, I have pamphlets, I have things lying around. Do you know how many young adults that I have to like sit down and say, look, I hear you talking about unwanted pregnancies and abortions and stuff. What I haven't heard you say is STDs and sexually transmitted diseases and HIV and women knowing their health, and these women coming to me who have not been to a gynecologist since before the end, you know, before Christ. You know, they ain't been in a long time, and it's just like, why haven't we been? You know, some women who, and I kid you not, never had a pap smear and don't know what a pap smear is. You know, in our community, I got a problem with that. Mr. Hill, I said STD. I have a sister that says sometimes kids don't come out the way they should come out. Anywho, it's the sexual liberation is also the freedom to talk about body parts and what these body parts do, and sex ed, because some of us think that we teaching these kids sexual education, but we again we have a difficulty talking about the things that are hard to talk about. You know, with the boys, we going all out. We bringing the condoms into the room and stuff. We showing them how to put them on and all of that. With the girls,
we passing around sticks of gum.
That look, like you said in that example, which is very disturbing to me. It's disturbing. I have to say it's disturbing. But we're not having those talks about, you know, let's go to the gynecologist. Let's get some questions answered. Okay. Let me tell you what a pap smear is and what's the purpose of a pap smear, young lady. Let me tell you what you can catch out here other than just a baby. Mm-hmm. You know, we can teach them to do whatever they want, when they want, and how they want to do it. But we have to actually tell them that you may or may not be able to control these consequences based on these decisions that you're making. You know, you may not be able to, you can't cry away, you know, gonorrhea. You can't whine away, you know, an STD after you've decided to have sex unprotected with someone. It's a gamble. It's a gamble. I just told somebody that on social media, you know, and of course it was a male, and of course he was displeased with my answer. But my answer to that was, when you sign up to have sex, you signing up for really all of it. It's a gamble. Yes. It's like rolling dice. It's like rolling dice. And I think that we need to have that conversation. And if they choose to roll the dice, okay, let me show you what might happen. Okay. And if you choose not to roll the dice, it doesn't make you what's the term that they used to use? A lame or a square.
Prudish.
You just chose not to roll. Yeah, there you go. You just chose not to roll the dice. You know. Now, if you are a person who is spiritual and you have spiritual beliefs, like I did when I was a teenager, you know, my belief was, I'm not gonna give myself away to nobody except for my husband. Okay. That almost worked, but not quite. Okay. I'm not gonna give myself away. That's what I stood on, you know, and it worked because I didn't have no child as a teenager. I didn't have a child as a young adult. But when I did start, You know, it was a gamble. It was a gamble. You know, and that's how my grandmother explained it to me. It was a gamble. You know, right. In the comments, sex education is more than just knowing how to stick and move. It's so much, and then the other thing too, and then I'm gonna stop, the emotional part that we don't talk about with the boys, because contrary to what popular people want to say in society or whatever, there are some boys
that will be
they get
jumping
a
out
little.
your bushes.
There you go. They get, there you go, Cannon. They get connected. They get connected, and then we're not teaching them how to deal with their emotions surrounding a sexual relationship or relationships. Period. You know, all we get to hear is women are more emotional than men, and y'all need to learn how to control that. But nobody's talking to the boy about, okay, if I have
About
this
that
feeling
anger.
about this person that I'm speaking with, yeah, yeah, like, and they experience more than anger. They told to ignore the
Vulnerability,
other stuff,
anxiety.
you know. Yes,
Oh, I mean, yeah, they
because to
experience
me
those things, but
to,
they're allowed to manifest it as anger
there you go.
by
So
society. They don't look at anger as an emotion. So all their other emotions that they may experience, they channel it and and manifest it as anger. Like they could be anxious and
right,
it's gonna be anger. Like you said, they could be sad
right.
and it's gonna be anger. Like whatever it is, they're gonna manifest it as anger because that's an acceptable expression. But they don't look at that as an emotion.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, we need to teach them the emotional responsibility that comes along with sleeping with somebody. I just believe that. I just believe that. I have an older nephew, and I remember asking him recently back in the spring, hey, you dating anybody? We want a family trip, and he was like, no, because he said, A, I can't afford it. He's a college student, and then B, he was like, I don't think I'm ready for all of that. I got respect for you. Because obviously he's been thinking about it. Obviously he's been in a situation where he's just, I know it's gonna take a lot, and I'm not ready to go there. You know, so I think we need to have the conversations that are hard to have sometimes. I think we need to switch rooms sometimes. Sometimes mom need to go in there with son and talk to son, and then dad need to go in there with daughter and talk to her, and then we all come on together and have a conference. Let's talk about what we heard from mom and dad. You know. So
I like what you said about emotional responsibility, which you may not agree, Cannon, but I didn't necessarily mind what T.I. did. I mean, the reality is, I know. The reality is that baby is more than likely going to come home to there. And in the perfect world, like you said, yeah, we can both be playhouse. I don't know what the goal would be in that situation, but when you don't have these talks with girls before, then it builds resentment. Sorry, and then that's when you get a lot of the parental alienation. And then with men, then they're confused because why are you treating me like this? Well, I'm the only one with the consequences, And so when you don't have these conversations ahead of time, you don't have the reality, because in the perfect world, yeah, we could both give y'all the consequences, but reality is that child is going to come home to T.I.'s home until they go out and do whatever they think they're going to do. If they go be a family, cool. If they don't, whatever. But I mean, we can play.
Well, I can tell you why I say
what happened.
I can tell you why I say what I say because of things that I've seen firsthand. Why I say that is we severely underestimate the consequences or how that affects men, and that's because my son, my oldest son that I have with my ex-husband or whatever. I have the experience of I had my son, I brought my son home. My son was my world. Like nobody could tell me anything about my baby. This is my baby. Like we're gonna fight, right? My husband now, we've known each other since we were like 13 years old, right? So we've been friends for a very long time. I watched this man go through an experience with his first son, who he loved, like I love my son, right? But he couldn't take his son home. You see what I mean? But he loved his son like I love my son. I cannot imagine if somebody tells me I cannot take my son home.
Well, I'm not saying you can't take the child home.
No.
Initially,
no.
The going to come home with T.I.'s family.
Because they had so many issues in the beginning, what I'm saying is I watched a man go through emotional grief and turmoil because they could not be with their child the way that they wanted to. And that is very severe. So what I'm saying is we can sit here and be like, well, it's not the same consequence because she take the baby home. Yeah, like she don't have to have somebody telling her she can't see her baby and she can't get the baby.
Well, what's the solution if they're not a married couple and they're not in the house together and she's obviously living with her dad and his family and he's doing whatever? I mean, what is the solution? If y'all don't have a home,
I'm not saying that yeah. No, I'm not saying that that's not the solution or not. What I'm saying is that we're underestimating the consequence that has for you. You said you agree because for T.I. not to be as hard on his son because the girl is going to take.
Oh no, not to be hard on his son, but to actually be, conscious of the fact that if she does bring a baby home, it's going to come here. Because the reality is,
but then he's not conscious of what his son is going to be going through. If his son had a baby out there somewhere that he can't have access to, you do see what I'm saying? We underestimate
what you're saying. Yeah. It's not like you're assuming it's going to be bad, but what I'm saying is, if the son wants to be a father, that's something you sit down and talk about. Y'all, if y'all want to be a family, go get a home, go get an apartment, whatever, go be a family. But if y'all not, then we got to pick a stable place for the baby to stay stable, not bouncing back and forth, whatever y'all trying to do with y'all instability,
but that's what I'm saying. That's why it's important to talk to boys about that as a reality. Is what I'm saying is when they never even think of that as a reality. When we come from the assumption that men or boys don't want to be fathers, right? Or are not going to want to be fathers or are not going to want you to, it's like we already have this idea, right? When we say, well, the baby going to be over there. It's like we already coming from the assumption that he's not going to care as much, right? And he going to be making.
I think it's just because the mom's more than likely, or not more than likely, sorry, but most of the time the mom's going to breastfeed. So
right, no. What I'm saying is a man needs to be aware of that. That if he has a child, that he's not prepared. You see what I'm saying? He's not prepared for the fact, right? That if he has a child with somebody he's not with, or who he's not in a home with, he is not mentally prepared or doesn't even understand the emotional consequences that will have. Is what I'm saying. Because she over there breastfeeding the baby somewhere, you ain't seen your baby for 5 days. And
that's not okay. I'm saying,
right. And what I'm saying
over, y'all can have a
sleep and prepare them for the consequence. We tell them, oh, that baby gonna be over there, but we don't tell them how that's gonna make them feel when that baby over there. Do you see what I'm saying? That's why they so willy-nilly about the stuff that they do, and then they confused after the fact when they're in the situation and they didn't have any expectation to have these experiences. That's what I'm saying. That's why it's important to not just be like, oh, well, if my daughter have a baby, she gonna bring the baby here. Well, it's just as paramount. If your son have a baby, he's gonna be just as in maybe even a worse situation.
You should be over there.
Now y'all have no control over what's going on with that baby, right? So it's possibly could be even worse. You know what I mean? So now you got to go to court and you got to do all this stuff. So yeah, it's just as important, and that's all I was saying.
I think too, we got to look at T.I. We talking about somebody who got a bunch of kids.
Yeah,
I think T.I. got like 3-4. He got 3-4 different baby mamas.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I think that he did what he did because I think here comes the trauma. Here comes the trauma. He remembered what it was like as a young man making these children, and I got one over here and I got one over here, and I want to marry her, so I got some over here too, but I want her to get along with the rest of them. Well, I got all this stuff going on, and I think sometimes we make these decisions and choices thinking that we got our children's best interest in mind, when really in the back of our head we like, I don't want them to be messed up like I was messed up, or I don't want them to do what I had to deal with or do. I think that's what it was. I think I think that he thought about, and I'm not saying, I don't know how he treated his baby mother. I don't know his conversation or communication with them. All we know is what we saw on TV, that he has this open communication. Obviously he do, because all the children at some point come and live with him all together. So, I think that he did what he did because there you go, projection. That's the word I was looking for. I think he was kind of like, I know what I went through making all these kids and having them here, there, and everywhere. I don't want my daughter to be one of those girls.
But then you should want your son to be like you. You see what I mean?
Hey, I didn't say it was right. I'm just telling you what
I'm just the reality.
I think he is projecting on some level. I think a lot of dads, especially black dads, do that. I think a lot of black dads who have multiple children with multiple different women look at these daughters different because they know, here it comes, they know how they treated somebody else's daughter.
Right, so but it's even crazy, and it's even more of a cognitive dissonance because the daughter that you're talking about, he's not with that. That's one of the women that he did whatever, and he's not with. So
it was his best friend.
Showing her,
it was his best friend at the time. He had a daughter with his best friend.
Mm-hmm. So you are actually you're not giving her that framework or that foundation, or you're not actually showing her, right? You actually have her mother, who she's gonna be spending time with her mother. She's gonna be, looking at what her mother does, not what her mother says, not what you say, what you do, not considering none of that. But you just think you could just go out here all willing, then just get your daughter and be like, no, you're not gonna do it. Yes, she is. Yes, she is. Because you're not even in the house with her. You didn't even up things in a way so that you can consistently be. You didn't even plan for that, right? To be like, okay, I want to have all my kids with the same person to be in one house so I can be present, right? You didn't even think about none of that, but now you want to after the fact be like, you gonna. That's not how kids work. Sorry, it's just not. That's not how
it's not. But that's how trauma and projection works, though. That's how it works.
Yeah.
I think that, if he was here with us today, I would tell him to process and work that out. Process that with yourself. Understand that your children are not you. Understand that on some level you may want your sons to be like you, but have this same conversation and concern with them that you're having with the daughter. Understand that they're not the situation that you found yourself in. Because if I'm not mistaken, he was young when he started having children. I think his oldest son, in his 20s, I think. His oldest son is in his 20s. I think that he looked back on what he did and was like, well, I don't want her to go through what I might have put somebody else's daughter through. So I'm gonna put a chokehold on I'm going to the doctor. I'm going to find out if she's been doing X, Y, and Z. I'm going to do this and that.
Instead of being a better example for her.
Right. But again, that trauma, when that trauma activates, because we normalize our trauma. And when it activates, we ain't looking at rhyme and reason. We're looking at let me find out. Let me do some investigating. Let me do this and that, instead of just having a conversation with her. And obviously, because I think some of it played out on that reality show they were on. And obviously, there's some communication issues with him and her, even beyond this topic. I think he showed us a good example of what it looks like when, like I said, sometimes mom needs to go in the room and talk to the son, and dad needs to go and develop the communication with the daughter. This is a classic example where he could have done that and he didn't. He asserted authority instead of having a discussion. And the worst thing you can do with an adolescent or a teenager or a young person that you're parenting is assert your authority and let them know, I'm the boss, so I'm going to do this and that. You have literally just shut down communication. You have. You're not looking at them as someone that, okay, we can talk about this. Let's discuss. Tell me what you've been up to. Tell me who you've been dating. Do you want to share that with me? No. What do we do? My Black Mama Award finna come on. Now we doing investigating. Okay. Now we sniffing around in the room. Now we looking at stuff.
I think you touching on our last topic now. You got to pause.
We gotta wrap this one up. Okay. Ashley, I was gonna say I agree with you ladies. I do think that as a parent, I'm a teacher, y'all. So I deal with a lot of kids. You do have to assert authority, but you have to do it in a loving way. And you have to do it in a way that respects them as people.
There you go.
Yes. You have to be open and receptive to listening and hearing and having conversations as well, and equipping them to make decisions and allowing them the space to make those decisions. But when you just go from the authoritative standpoint and you're trying to, I won't even say that was authoritative, because that's not being a leader. That was more so trying to control. And
Mm-hmm.
doing that absent guidance is not effective. And that's why we saw her, pretty much publicly denounce what he said or what he was doing, and really said some things that I think she should have kept private, but she rejected pretty much everything that he was really trying to do. He meant well, but the way he went about it was not effective, unfortunately, because it was very intrusive, very disrespectful, and a little bit demeaning. I could not imagine anybody thinking that they should come to my like a pap smear appointment with me.
Right.
It's so strange.
And then tell the world about it.
I know.
Yeah.
Right.
That's not weird at all.
So
right. But think about his family dynamic real quick, and then we're gonna continue. You got a young man who grew up in a house with an older sister, a single mama, some old school granddads and uncles, that he's protective of. He got the streets, Bankhead, okay, West Side. They talking, players, pimps, and everything. This is how you conduct yourself around women. Then you got this older sister and mama that you treasure so much, and then you out here in the street. It goes back to what we were saying earlier. All these different conversations he might have had about sex and women, and then it's like a dice, it's like a gamble. Let me go with this and see if that works. I think that's what he did. And hopefully he'll grow and evolve from this decision and learn something better to do as a father of young Black women. Hopefully. We're going to find out and see. So.